Hello there, my name is Michael and I'm here to talk to you today about Waves SoundGrid. Now you may have heard this term SoundGrid in your conversations with other fellow musicians and creatives, and you may be wondering, what is it? What does it do? But most importantly, you might be thinking, why does it have anything at all to do with me? Well, I am here to talk to you about all those things and make sure that you walk away with a better understanding of both what it is, what it does, but again, most importantly, how it actually affects you and your creative environment. So, without further ado, let's dig in. First things first, what is Wave SoundGrid? Here's the elevator pitch. SoundGrid is a network protocol developed at Waves for transferring audio on a 1 gigabit Ethernet network. Now, first things first, transferring audio. That means that we're moving audio from A to B, C, D, E, and F, etc., all across a 1 gigabit Ethernet network, which means a switch that you've seen in your local office shop and electronics shop over standard Ethernet cables. So this is not new technology. This is technology that you see on the shelf every day. You've been using it in your life, whether you've realized it or not. This is technology that we've taken and we've put a whole new spin on over the years. And we've been developing this, and we are constantly developing this to make it bigger and better all the time. So that's the first thing. That's what SoundGrid actually is. Now, the next point is, okay, what are the benefits of SoundGrid? How does SoundGrid actually benefit you? So let's look at a few of those. First things first, more processing power. SoundGrid will give you more processing power and give you the opportunity to run hundreds, and I mean that literally, hundreds of plugins with SoundGrid processing power. That's a really big deal because it gives you a lot more flexibility. So we're going to talk a bit about that, and I'll actually show it you happening on my computer so that you actually see what happens and how we work it. One of the important things here is a lot of people are scared of technology, and this is technology that once you have a bit of a grasp on what it is and what it does, you will forget that the technology is there, and that's how consistent it really is. Second point, low latency monitoring. And that means being able to track, that means record, track and rehearse with SoundGrid compatible plugins in near zero latency. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. Low latency monitoring, so recording with plugins at extreme low latency. That's been one of those dreams for so many musicians and mixers and recording engineers over the years that has had a very perceived high budget entry level. What we've done with Wave SoundGrid is bring that entry level down to absolutely anybody. It's like the budget now is incredibly flexible to get into recording with very, very low latency and all of your plugins active. Now, the bonus there is it means that while you're actually recording your audio, you can commit to that sound at the same time as having the flexibility to change that sound after the fact. So it's actually better than recording in the older days where you had to really commit to it. Now you can commit to your sound and then change it, tweak it a bit after the fact. So it's a big deal. And the third one, networking. I love networking. As you can tell, I'm a very shy, quiet human being. So I love talking to people. I love talking to people about SoundGrid. But networking, being able to connect all of your fellow musicians and their gear and their computers and their digital audio workstations, have them all connected to you as the central hub. And you are the central hub because you're the one watching me and helping me explain this to you on this video. So you are the central hub. Having all those people with their gear connected to you means networking, again, without worrying about the technology. And you end up getting a better creative collaboration, more creative flow. And it does help you and everybody get the best sound. And you're doing all this across Ethernet cables. So it's very, very cool. So those are the three main points that I want to speak a bit more about, a bit more in depth. Not too much in depth, because I know you're busy, you got other things to do, so let's get on with this. Okay, so more processing power. Now, how do we do more processing power? It's really simple. We add a SoundGrid DSP server, and we can run hundreds of plugins on those SoundGrid DSP servers. And we're offloading the plugins from your mix and your recordings onto our own SoundGrid DSP server. One question that comes up a lot when I talk to people about being able to offload their plugins and take that pressure off their DAW is this one. Do I need to replace my existing audio interface and replace it with something that has the word SoundGrid on it? And the simple answer is no, you don't. If you have an audio interface, ACO or core audio interface that you really love, it's a part of your studio, even down to the look of it. People love the way their interfaces look. This is something that we're not going to make you get rid of. You can totally add a SoundGrid DSP server to your existing setup. You would leave it connected exactly the same way it's connected to your computer now. You keep the same playback engine that goes with that audio interface. What you are doing is purchasing a SoundGrid DSP server, and you're installing the driver for that, the software driver, and you're connecting it with an Ethernet cable to your computer. And that lets you offload all those plugins from your DAW to that SoundGrid DSP server. But here's the bigger deal. By adding that SoundGrid DSP server to your humble setup that you are so in love with, you've created the first brick in a very, very big, complex building that is incredibly easy to build. You add a SoundGrid I/O next, or as you can see, there are other DAWs on the screen in front of you. Those could be your fellow musicians with their interfaces, or you could have different rooms connected, and all of the audio between all of these different stations can stream backwards and forwards. It's really exciting stuff. And all of this stems from you making the decision to go, I'm going to buy a SoundGrid DSP server and offload my plugins to that DSP server, which means that my DAW has more air to breathe around it so it can concentrate on the other really cool things that it does, like automation, clip gain, etc., to really get the best sound that you possibly can. So that's processing power, being able to really, really take that. So how do we do that? Well, when you install your SoundGrid DSP server, one of the things that happens with it, and I'm just going to do a couple of things here in the background. It's like changing screens. So what I'm doing is I'm basically doing all of the changing and moving around of my screens in the background, and bam, there you go. So now what we're looking at is SoundGrid Studio. This is the heart of the driver that you installed when you purchased a SoundGrid DSP server. Now that server is here. It's identified here under servers. But you'll also see that I've got a couple of SoundGrid I/Os in my device rack, my hardware I/O devices rack. Now, this is where you would add your existing I/O. You would click on, let's go in this box here. If I click on the arrow, local devices, and your device will be under that list, right? So it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's ACO or core audio compatible, your local I/O will be under that list. And then you can offload plugins to your DSP server. Now, the way you do that is in your DAW. When you installed the driver, we also installed this handy Swiss Army penknife of a plugin called Studio Rack. And it doesn't matter which DAW you're using, whether you're on PC or Mac, this is cross-platform. So don't pay any attention to the DAW I'm using. This will work in yours as long as it's ACO and core audio compatible. Now, Studio Rack is a few things. First thing is it gives you the ability to offload your plugins to a SoundGrid DSP server. So when I'm pressing play, okay, I can just unbypass here. You're not going to hear anything, but because it says processing on SoundGrid, it means that all the processing power of any of those plugins is being sent directly to my SoundGrid DSP server. So this is not happening on my computer. Now, if I wanted to, I could go back to local, and now all those plugins are being processed again natively actually on my computer. So you have the choice there, and I really do want to make that clear. Now, a really big deal about Studio Rack is, and I'm assuming you do have some Waves plugins in your account already, right? Right? Okay, so that means that you can go to waves.com now, log into your account, and you can download Studio Rack for free. And it works perfectly well natively, regardless of not having a SoundGrid I/O or a SoundGrid DSP server, you can use this natively in your own mixes now. So what's the advantage of that? Well, first one, you're saving a chain of plugins as a single preset, which saves you time in your creative process. The second thing is that it means that you can add more plugins to each of those tracks, because Studio Rack will answer to your delay compensation in your digital audio workstation, what I'm in right now, as only one voice. So it sees it literally as one plugin, right? So those are a few of the advantages of Studio Rack. So if you don't already have Studio Rack on your computer, I do suggest that you log into waves.com now if you have some existing Waves plugins and download Studio Rack for free so that you can start having a mess around and getting familiar with it. It's very, very cool. So there you go. So now you have a bit of an idea of how we actually move plugins around and offload them from your computer, which is very cool. Now we're talking about offloading plugins, and that does involve SoundGrid DSP servers. So let's go through the servers that we currently have available. There are 3 of them: small, medium, and large. The smallest one is the Impact server. That's the one that you're seeing in the middle. Now that one, you literally can run hundreds of plugins on the Impact server, and it's just a box. You plug it in with a power cable, you plug it in with an Ethernet cable to your computer or your switch, and once the driver's installed, you're up and running. The next one up from that is the Server 1, the Waves SoundGrid Server 1, which is the one on the top left. That's about 40% more powerful than the Impact server. So it's about 40% more power yet again. And you can see we're getting serious now. This is a 2U heavy-duty rack-mounted piece of gear. So these get used a lot in live sound and also a lot in studio. So, but it's very, very powerful box. And the top of the line, guys, is the Extreme server, which is the one on the right-hand side. Now that's about 40% more powerful yet again than the Server 1. So it's like you're pushing on nearly double the amount of power than the Impact server from top to bottom. So these are very, very powerful number crunching DSP servers for your audio. And again, you don't need screens for them, you don't need keyboards, mouse or anything. You plug in the power cable, you plug in the Ethernet connection, you let the driver software do its thing and locate it, and then you are literally up and running. So there you go. So that's SoundGrid DSP servers. So let's move along. Okay, so what's the next one we want to talk about? You may have heard a few minutes ago while I was talking, we were talking about low latency monitoring while recording. Now, again, this is being able to track and rehearse with a ton of plugins, SoundGrid compatible plugins, in virtually 0 latency. So how do we do that? Well, this is where you will require the use of a SoundGrid compatible audio interface. Now, there are a lot of interfaces. You saw I'm using a couple of them right now, and I'll show you the back of one in a minute. All SoundGrid audio interfaces, if you look at the back of this one, they have an Ethernet port, and then they have a little Waves logo, Waves SoundGrid logo on the top of them. So that's how you know if you've got a Waves SoundGrid compatible audio interface. And I would like to specify that we're not the only company that makes these audio interfaces. There are a lot of other companies that make Waves SoundGrid compatible audio interfaces on the market, which is very, very exciting for us and for you, because it gives you a lot more flexibility and freedom to choose exactly what you want. So now let me just move back here to my recording session. Now, if I go back where we are, there we go. Okay, so we're back on pretty much the same screen. Now, what I've got here is I've got some flexibility in this plugin to be able to really get the low latency that I want. But I need to be in SoundGrid mode. I need to be connected to that SoundGrid DSP server to be able to do that. So let's go back from our local CPU and switch back to SoundGrid. So now I'm in SoundGrid mode. You see all these buttons have become active on Studio Rack. And all of this controls what's going on with your SoundGrid DSP server. So that's why you don't have to worry about anything else but what you're actually doing creatively. So if I press play now, you'll see that the plugin went into what we call playback mode, which means you're listening through your plugins in Studio Rack to what's happening on the track in your DAW. So anything that's happening there, you're listening to it through your plugins, okay? So now when I press stop, I've set this up so it goes back into input. And it's a very, very simple setup. There's another video on the website that I show you how to do that. That way you can flip between the different modes very easily in an automated fashion. So it goes back into input mode. And the reason it does that is because we're assuming that if you're recording a live musician and they're on a microphone, you might want to hear them even when you're not recording so that you can talk to them or hear the instrument. So when I press record, let's press record here and let's go there. Beautiful. So now we're actually recording through the plugins and we're recording at virtually zero latency. And we're doing that because we're going around about your DAW and doing it through the SoundGrid DSP server, which is very, very exciting. Now, when I press play again, look, it goes bam, straight back into playback mode, and I can hear what I've recorded. So, yep, there's another version of the same percussion, and everything is good in the world. An important thing to mention here is that you're not actually printing your plugins that you're recording at low latency through to the track. What we're doing is we're giving you the chance to really get your sound right, but keep the original recording there. So you're tracking and you're rehearsing and monitoring through your plugins, but they're not printing to tape, which is very cool, which means that, as I said, at the end of the day, when you do get to working out what you've done in your mix and mixing it, you're not beholden to what you did. You got to commit to a really good sound, but you don't have to keep it. You can tweak it, and you've got the freedom and the flexibility to really, really make that sound your own. So it's a very, very important point. It's like we're not making you print these plugins to the track. SoundGrid gives you the flexibility to do whichever one you want. Okay, back to it. Let's talk about networking. Now, in the past, a lot of the times when you've been working with somebody and they've come in with a different software package on a different operating system and they've got tracks that they were working on last night that are very important to the session that you're both working on, it's really hard to work on how do you get that audio into your system. Do you do like a special complicated export, or do you record it out real time and then move it in over a hard drive? All of these things can create a nightmare. Well, I'm happy to tell you that Wave SoundGrid makes all of that a lot easier. It just makes it so much easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my screen here, and I'm going to show you where we are here again, but I'm going to show you that I've got another computer. Now, okay, so we've got two computers. I've got a PC and I've got a Mac. Now you can see by looking at these screens that they're both running very different software packages. And then of course, then there's the fact that they're both completely different operating systems as well. So all of these things, you know, it's like, how do you get audio from the one there to the one there? Do you see how I did that? That one to that one? Very cool. Okay. So let's go back to my driver for a second. So now we're looking at my driver. Let's go back to that main screen. So this again is my driver. And as you saw, I've got multiple computers connected. The PC that you saw, this one is, if I go back to the other screen, is the one at number 3 spot, SoundGrid Tracks, okay? So SoundGrid Tracks is the one that I'm going to be taking audio from. And let's just say in this hypothesis that this is a friend of mine who's been working on extra drum tracks and extra pads, etc., and he wants to put them in the main section. Artists need to be flexible, right? Anyway, so that's what we've got here. So if I go into my patch bay in the driver and I go down to this little area here called device to device, you can see all of my interfaces and my laptops, etc., are both listed across the top and the left-hand side. Now, all I need to do, and this is really, it is a bit like a spreadsheet, is go down and look, there's my SoundGrid Tracks right there. And if you look up the top, there's my MPA laptop. MPA, that's me. G'day. Now, all I want to do is I want to move tracks from 3 to 11 there to 3 to 11 on my laptop. So from the PC on the left to that. So all I do is drag and drop, and it really is a bit like putting stuff on a spreadsheet. It's as simple as that. So now, if I go back, and let's look at both screens at the same time again, so let's move back to that. Now, if I press play, let's put all of these ones on the Mac in record. Okay, so there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got 4 tracks in record, okay? And I've got these tracks playing down here. Only 2 of them will play at the moment, but here we go. So if I press play, look, the signal of those tracks on my PC are now playing directly into the tracks that I want on my Mac. So say, for example, okay, so I'm going to press record on all of those, and I'm going to press play on the PC as well. So now what I'm doing is I'm recording all of the tracks that are on the PC directly through an Ethernet cable and directly over to my Mac. And it's as simple as that. And this happens in less than a millisecond of latency. And you can transport lock this as well. So you can actually set this up via a PDF, which is freely available on waves.com, so that you can actually have it so that when you press record on your one computer, it'll automatically press play on the other one. It's a very, very cool system. And again, all of this is helping you forget about the technology. But at the same point, you can go, okay, right, I want to add some more processing. So I've still got plugins on here as well. So this is helping your creative flow while you're networking and while you're actually creating, so that you not only are committing to your audio sound and quality on the way in, you're also having the flexibility after the fact, during the mix, to make minute changes or vast changes to that, so that you actually can really get the best sound possible for you. And that's very exciting to us. So while we're talking about SoundGrid, there are always questions that come up. And because you can't physically talk to me right now, rather than banging your head through the screen, which would be painful, I've collected a few of the bigger questions so that I can answer them for you. First one, do I have to offload all my plugins to the DSP server, or can I offload some to the server and let's move screens again, some to the server and keep processing some on my computer for an even higher plugin count, or for any other reason? Absolutely you can. Absolutely you can. So if I move back to my computer right now, so now we're back on my main recording session. So let's say, for example, let's look at this track right here. So there we've got, on this one right here, let's take all those records off just in case I record over it, which would be really bad. So if I press play on that track there, yeah, I've got some audio there, but it's not quite the way I want, but there's a plugin from another company, or it could be another Waves plugin, thank you. I don't want it to offload. I just want to add it natively so I've got more power. No problem. Remember, Studio Rack only takes up 1 voice space in your digital audio workstation, so you can add a ton more plugins. So let's go, okay, right, let's add a delay. Let's add H delay. So now I've got Studio Rack there. Let's pull that down because we don't want it to delay. But I've also got H delay, but I've also got Studio Rack running as well. So when I press play, you can see the signals going through both of them at the same time. So absolutely, you don't have to have all of your plugins going through Studio Rack and through your DSP server. You can totally run other plugins at the same time. Now, the next question, where's the next question? All right, there we go. This one right here. If I buy a SoundGrid server, what happens to my edit and mixing session when I disconnect the server? This is a really big deal, so I want you to pay extra attention. Actually, you should be paying attention to all of this, but make sure you pay attention to this one. Let me go back to my session here for a second. What I should have had is maybe 5 computers so I could have everything on separate screens, but you know, I'm juggling. You're with me, it's all good. So you're working here, everything's in SoundGrid. All of your plugins are going to the SoundGrid DSP server. You want to take the session on the road, no problem. If you see from the drop-down, you can move your Studio Rack instantiations from SoundGrid to local, and local means your computer's CPU DSP. or you can move all of your Studio Rack instantiations to SoundGrid, or move them all to local. So what I do is I just switch them all to local. So now, when I press save on that session, all of them are running natively on your computer. So I press save, take that session, off I go. But by the way, if you forget to do that, when it's not connected to the hardware, SoundGrid DSP server, these plugins will automatically flip back to native for you, which is it's a really flexible way of working. So your plugins are available to you regardless of whether you are connected to your SoundGrid system or whether you are working mobile on the road when they flip back to native. So you have the best of both worlds. That's a really important fact, I think, when you're talking about SoundGrid. It's like we give you this amazing flexibility which really does help your creative flow, but we don't want to restrict you in any way. We want to help you grow creatively, and we do, as I keep on saying, we want you to actually forget that the technology is there. All right, moving on, before I get sidetracked too more. If I'm using a SoundGrid server, can I only use my Waves plugins? I don't even have to move back for this one. No. You know what? I will move back for this one. So let's flip across the screens again and go back to my digital audio workstation. There we go. So there's Studio Rack. All right. So now let's add something from the digital audio workstation. Great. So there's that there. That's not a Waves plugin. Now all of these plugins in here, they are Waves plugins because that's what I've got installed. But at the same point, you can totally add any other SoundGrid compatible plugin. Plugin Alliance makes them. There's a cool company called Flux that makes SoundGrid compatible plugins. Sonox makes them. All of these companies, and more coming all the time, make SoundGrid compatible plugins that work perfectly well alongside the Waves SoundGrid plugins within your Studio Rack instantiations. Okay, number 4. If I have in the same session some plugins that are SoundGrid compatible and some that aren't, what do I do? Exactly the same as number 1, but this question does come up a lot, so I'm answering it even though it's roughly the same question. You have those plugins outside of Studio Rack and they work perfectly fine. You've got a ton of other plugin voices there in your digital audio workstation, so please use them, be flexible. Don't be scared to add stuff. Remember, it's all digital right now, so all you have to do is press undo and you're good to go. But yes, be flexible. We're not restricting you in any way, shape, or form. Do musicians with their own computers that I want to work with over SoundGrid need hardware or a server as well? Networking, people. So let's talk about that. If you go, let's go back to this for a second while I move back around. All right, so here we have my Pro Tools session. Now, if I move just over there, right. So let's say that you've got a friend and he's got a computer and he's bringing over his tracks and you want to connect with him the same way that I connected these two computers right here, okay? The only thing that he needs is that extra graphic that you see on my Mac right now. So he would put this SoundGrid control panel. He would open that on his computer after he's installed the free SoundGrid driver, and it is free. And all he would need to do is select the network port that he's connected to with Ethernet on your end. That's all he needs to do, okay? So when you go back to SoundGrid, your main hub, as I say, you're the one who was responsible for going in here and selecting him from this rack here. And if he's connected and he's on the right network, which is really easy to find, he will come up as the name of his computer. So if his name is Brad, tell Brad I said hi, and his computer will come up in this list down here, the same as all these other computers do. And then through the patch bay, you can actually choose if you want him from an input point of view, or whether you want to do like I've done, a device to device and do multiple tracks. There are many, many different ways for you to work creatively within SoundGrid. And the answer is no, he does not need any extra hardware. He does need to install the free driver though. So all this is very, very, very exciting. I find it exciting. I really hope you find it exciting as well. Now, one last question. Can we share an audio interface over SoundGrid? I have a writing partner and it would be cool for us both to connect to the same audio interface. Now, how many times have you thought that that would be a really cool idea if you could grab your mate and his computer and collaborate in both of your separate audio systems that you're comfortable in and actually have the ability to really move between them but have everything synced up as well? It's really simple. So again, let me just connect you up right here and let me bring up, where is it? There we go. So there's our driver again. Okay, so if we go back to the old inventory page, there we go. Now you'll notice here, as I said, I've got two SoundGrid IOs connected, and both of these are connected to a gigabit switch, which you can't see because it's all behind the screens, and I don't want to touch it right now because it's comfortable where it is. So, but the iOS, the DigiGrid iOS, is one of the two interfaces I have. So if I click this little asterisk here, it's going to bring up the control panel for the DigiGrid iOS, which is a very, very flexible interface and gives me a perfect example for explaining this to you. Now, if you look at this picture here at the back of the DigiGrid iOS, you'll see that this is 8 in, 8 out, MIDI, SPDIF, word clock, and it's got a 4-point gigabit switch in the back of it. Now, you could totally use those other 3 ports to do things like I'm doing, which is connecting other interfaces and stacking them up. But the other thing you could do is mix and match. You could connect a couple of mates' computers and their audio systems to that, and they install the SoundGrid driver, and now you're connected. Or you could install an extra computer connection there with an Ethernet cable to your friend's computer, and then another couple of interfaces as well. Mix and match it anyway, and if you want to expand more than that, then add a gigabit switch. But yes, totally, you have so much flexibility with how you connect to Wave SoundGrid. It's very, very exciting. So there you have it. That's pretty much Wave SoundGrid in an introductory nutshell. It's an audio over Ethernet network protocol, so which means that we move audio from A to B, B to C, D, etc. And we help you network all the people in your creative circle that are important to you so that you can get audio streamed between you and make the creative decisions you want to without letting the technology get in the way. And that's what really SoundGrid, I think, does for me, is it gives me the chance to actually go back to recording and creating and let the technology fall into the background. This is something that just works seamlessly. So we're very, very excited about it. I do hope today this has helped you work out what it is you can get out of SoundGrid. And I really hope that you want to continue your education and move forward a bit and do some more exploring. There's a ton of content on our website about SoundGrid. You'll see videos with me and other people that are using this in their day-to-day work. So this is not a new thing. I really hope to see you as a new member of the SoundGrid family very soon. Thanks for watching.